told my brother women don't like him because he's autistic. Story. I've got a younger brother, 24, with Asperger's, and he's very high functioning, albeit with his quirks. Recently, I've moved back home during the stay-at-home orders to look after my parents. My brother still lives with them. I find out he's been trying to date in recent months and confessed it's been pretty unsuccessful for him. He even got to go on a first date, but his date literally got up and left after about a half hour. I know exactly the reason why, and it's not flattering. For one thing, my parents coddled him since he was a kid because he was on the spectrum and was the only boy in our family. My mom in particular always told him he was smarter and advanced than everyone else who's neurotypical. This has led to his belief today that he genuinely is smarter than everyone else, especially women who he thinks are inherently irrational, illogical people. So I know how he interacts with women like me or his other sisters. He tends to say very hurtful things first, and when we get upset, he will then say things like, "You are being irrational, hysterical, illogical. I'm just being honest, and you can't accept it." This is like his catchphrase over the years and drives us absolutely insane. Anyways, when he asked me, I basically said, "Listen, the truth is your way of talking to women can come across as extremely demeaning and borderline sexist." I told him he acts like he can read every woman perfectly when he's pretty much always wrong. This struck the wrong nerve with him, and he later complained to my parents that I attacked him over things he can't control. Now I'm in hot water for ruining his confidence, and I feel both bad and kind of relieved at the same time. This was the first time in my life I told him how annoying his behavior is, because growing up, our mom always blamed us whenever he got upset. But maybe I was too harsh? Am I the a-hole for telling him what I said? Response 1, NTA. He asked, and you gave a reasonable answer. It doesn't even sound like you were being unnecessarily harsh. Also, it's kind of hilarious that he calls women irrational, but he loses it after being told the truth. I'd stop coddling him. His autism doesn't give him a free pass to be a jerk. Edit, spelling. Reply 1. I was thinking the same thing. Like, if you think women are so terrible and irrational, why would you want to be with one? And he thinks they're the irrational ones. But he goes crying to mommy and daddy when his sister points this carp out. He's taking advantage of them. He's realized he'll always get his way, and that everyone else will always be made out to be the bad guy because he's the one that's considered disabled. The reason I initially was going to think YTA was because of the title, and I thought you were going to straight up say they don't like you because you have Asperger's. Reply 2, I would say OP was the a-hole too, but after reading their post, I realized their brother doesn't have a girlfriend is because he's spoiled and arrogant as hell. Reply 3, honestly, some people on the spectrum need to hear this sort of stuff. It can be frustrating not understanding why you aren't having success with dating. Source, have high-functioning autism. Good for OP for being straightforward about it, even if it might have upset him. Sounds like he needed it. Reply 4, my boyfriend is on the spectrum, and he has asked me similar questions about why people don't like him or about what he can do to make social situations go smoother. I tell him the truth in specific ways, like when we were at that event last weekend and Joe started setting up the chairs. Everyone but you took that as a silent signal to get up and help him. I know that you didn't join in because you didn't catch the silent signal, so you didn't realize. But to them, it seemed like you were knowingly ignoring it, which is rude. He really appreciates that I can break it down like this and get to the root of what he needs to know in order to do better the next time. What he does not do is go whining to everyone that I attacked him. That is being an a-hole. Reply 5. He also has you doing this for him, i.e. providing him with the information on cultural and social conventions. The OP was taught to never provide truthful answers to her brother. His parents weren't raising him and teaching him about the world. They were taking the easy way out, not making him upset. I genuinely can't believe the kids were taught to cut their words around him. He is a grown person in a world hostile to his neurology, and he has no idea about the world. He's already processing by using toxic coping mechanisms. Response 2. He asked, Autistic people on Reddit are always saying that they wish people would just be forthcoming and honest about these things. Your parents are the ones who really suck here. They have done him no favors by raising him like this. Reply 1. Am autistic person on Reddit and can confirm. Honestly, my life would have been a lot better growing up if anyone, including my family, had ever told me that I was the a-hole. Someone did eventually, but not until like college, and now that I've taken the steps to learn about other people and how to interact with them, I'm horrified by who I was. Reply 2. If it makes you feel better, this would have likely happened with or without autism. At a certain age, most people realize a lot of their flaws and grow out of them. I wish more people had called me an a-hole because I got away with it so I didn't change. I'm also horrified by who I was. Growing up is good. Reply 3. I think the parents telling him he was smart and special plus autism, making communication and social skills harder to grasp, made this happen. He doesn't understand the social cues, but instead of getting help from friends and family, like X, you're being too blunt when you say that, try to say it like this, he got a superiority complex and never actively tried to learn social cues. It isn't his fault, 100%, but he is not hallucinating, and his actions are his choice, so he reaps what he sows. It will be hard, but he needs to learn. Reply 4. If it helps, I've worked with both autistic and NT kids/teens, and any child become a selfish AH if their parents never tell them they were wrong. It's just unfortunate that parents of disabled kids tend to infantilize them more than their NT kids, when really the disabled kids might need that straightforward, tough love to even begin to understand what's going on. Reply 5. Yeah. It's why I can't stay mad even at people who were really, really awful to me in high school. We've all grown up now, and I'm sure most, if not all of them, are better people. We all had our own demons. Response 3. This has led to his belief today that he genuinely is smarter than everyone else, especially women who he thinks are inherently irrational, illogical people. Yikes. He tends to say very hurtful things first, and when we get upset, he will then say things like, "You are being irrational/hysterical/illogical. I'm just being honest and you can't accept it." Just because they're women, he needs a reality check. Anyways, when he asked me, I basically said, listen, the truth is your way of talking to women can come across as extremely demeaning and borderline sexist. You said it a lot nicer than I would have done. It isn't just the way he's talking, it sounds like he is sexist. This struck the wrong nerve with him, and he later complained to my parents that I attacked him over things he can't control. He can obviously control it. He's high functioning, going on dates, talking to you guys, understanding. He's just not acting like he's in this century. Also, he went to your parents to complain. He's 24. If he wants to complain, he can complain to his friends or to you, since you're the one he's mad at. You're not the a-hole. Nope. His own actions are leading to dates going the way they are. Reply 1, just piggybacking off of this to say Asperger's is an explanation, not an excuse. I have Asperger's. As other commenters have noted, breaking ASDs into high and low functioning has some issues that come along with it and doesn't always paint an accurate picture of what's going on. That being said, and it bears repeating, Asperger's is an explanation, not an excuse. The entire reason behind getting a diagnosis is to try and figure out how the person can learn and adapt, given how his or her mind works and processes information a bit differently. And most importantly, how to adapt and develop relationships with others given these differences. It sounds like OP's parents treated her brother's condition the opposite way that they should have, as a reason he acts and is the way he is, and a reason he shouldn't be expected to change. Sure, Aspies will always be different and quirky, but the diagnosis isn't an excuse for failing to try and adapt to other people. OP, if you're reading this, ask your brother if he thinks that women are inherently illogical and Aspies are inherently logical. We are not, by the way, we just value logic a lot, and he would know this if your parents had dealt with the diagnosis correctly. Ask him how he explains the existence of women with his condition. And there are tons of men who aren't on the spectrum. Are they inherently illogical too? His own logic breaks down the second you dig a little deeper, as is often the case. This just goes to show that this isn't about the brother's Asperger's, it's about his sexist attitudes. He has a problem with women, and women have a problem with him, for good reason. Yes, part of why he's probably developed these views is because he's been hurt by women not liking him because of his condition, and that's probably part of why what you said cut so deep. That being said, he's exacerbating the problem with his attitude. He needs to grow up and realize that he has responsibility for the way he acts. Again, Asperger's is an explanation for some of his difficulties, not an excuse. Not all Aspies are a-holes, but this one is a huge one. I would love to date an Aspie guy, but I'd run like hell from this one. Not the a-hole. Reply 2. Yes, amen. I don't have Asperger's, nor am I on the spectrum, but I was having a similar talk with my therapist about my BPD. I feel like a terrible person so much of the time because a lot of people think BPD is just an excuse for being an a-hole. Being an a-hole to someone can be an explanation of BPD, but it is most certainly not an excuse. And to be honest, I wouldn't even say I'm an a-hole to people. I hear some stories about others and their interpersonal relationships, and I would say I try really hard to be a good person to my friends and family. I can really be a terrible person when I fear someone is going to abandon me and slash, or I want more from a relationship, but I do not by any means condone my actions. I work very hard in therapy to try not to act like that, and I'm growing constantly through the ups and downs. BPD explains my reactions to things, but it is not an excuse to act the way I do. So yes, I just really resonated with what you said. I think everyone should really take this into account. Sometimes there are things that can explain the way someone acts, but it is never an excuse to act that way. Reply 3. Also, he went to your parents to complain? He's 24. Exactly. OP needs to tell her parents, we're both adults, so please stay out of it. It's none of their business. I don't even meddle in stupid fights like that for my 10 and 13-year-old unless one is clearly bullying the other or it becomes physical. I always first try to let them work things out on their own, because learning how to communicate and resolve disagreements is an essential skill. The parents intervening in an argument between their adult children is proof to me of how much they coddle him. Response 4. NTA. If you don't tell him, some other woman will. I think it's better coming from someone that actually knows him, or else he could just write it off as an illogical response from some angry woman. Could it have been done more tactfully? Maybe. But I think your brother is dangerously at risk of being an incel if you aren't straight with him. Reply 1. Autist here. Tactfulness might not matter to OP's brother. We do tend to strip things down to their content. So if OP had been more tactful, i.e. sugar-coated it, then the brother would likely have misinterpreted or kept asking questions to make OP be more and more specific until he said the tactless version. By the way, a lot of the autistic community is like this. People like to ignore it and pretend it's not their fault because criticizing those with disabilities is frowned upon, but I, Mel, see this a lot. Pure logic equals good, no exceptions, crossed with public/media conscious and subconscious opinion of women being emotional and illogical, crossed with an inability to evaluate sources, well, often ends in autistic males having this personality trait. They also often subsequently decide they are being discriminated against unfairly and are the victim of the situation, making themselves hateful incels and the situation of their poor dating success even worse. Reply 2. Very much want to second and third this. Male and autistic myself have also seen this a lot, also tends to go hand in hand with a feeling of superiority over all those irrational neurotypicals and such, I've found. Rather annoyingly, when you drill down a bit and start poking some well-reasoned and argued holes into that whole logic all the way, emotions are for losers routine, it turns out they're often not particularly receptive to actual logic and tend to get rather emotional about it when challenged on their views, and usually not fans of irony either. Really sounds like OP's parents did her brother no favors, the way he was raised. At this stage, hard to see him getting and listening to the kind of feedback he needs to turn things around for himself. Even if he did get some, his parents will just continue to undermine that. He's definitely TA, but I also do feel for him. Reply 3. Rather annoyingly, when you drill down a bit and start poking some well-reasoned and argued holes into that whole logic all the way, emotions are for losers routine, it turns out they're often not particularly receptive to actual logic and tend to get rather emotional about it when challenged on their views. My husband has autism, and this is him, oh my God. Reply 4. Thanks for informing me. I'll have to reevaluate how I think about having these conversations in the future. I didn't think about how sugarcoating a tough conversation can actually be more confusing or complicated. I appreciate the clarity. Reply 5. Can I offer a suggestion? And I'd love it if autistic people could chime in and tell me if they think this would work for them. Instead of being tactful by sugarcoating, you can be tactful by balancing good and bad. For every negative criticism you give at least one positive thing. One thing to keep, one thing to change. Don't sugarcoat the bad things, but soften the blow by pairing it with a good thing. So for gross, bland cooking, instead of, "This was really good, but I would have liked it even better with a bit more spice," you would say something like, "I found it flavorless and it needed more spice, but the texture was perfect." Now, they can't misinterpret the first one as acceptable flavor, but not to this one person's specific tastes. Response 5. You didn't insult him. You gave a dose of truth. Of he wants to be in a relationship, he needs to fix his attitude towards women. Reply 1. Agreed. Ask him if he would want to be in a relationship with a woman who talks to him the way he talks to them. Give examples of things he said. When he says he wouldn't want that, tell him it's just logic that women don't want that either. Reply 2. I don't know. A lot of times these types of guys will also get deep into the pickup artist type bullcarp, partially because it tends to affirm their worldview. Women want to be insulted. They don't want to have to think. They prefer a man who's smarter than them and shows it. If you asked if he liked it, he'd probably just say, "No, but I'm not a woman." Response 6. NTA. Your parents have raised him to be a sexist narcissist, and now he can't find anyone to put up with him. You are actually showing him more love, telling him the truth so he can change than your parents do, sheltering and lying to him. Response 7. NTA, who else better to hear it from than his sister? He wanted to know, you told him. Tell him he can change and have a shot at getting a girlfriend, or stay the way he is and be alone. Response 8. NTA, it's not confidence that he has. It's a mislead false hope instilled by his parents, who don't want to admit to him that real life might be harder for him. They have the best, loving intentions, but they're creating something that will hurt him more than the truth will in the long run. Reply 1. The word arrogance comes to mind. Even if he were objectively a more logical person than others, that doesn't make it okay to lord over people about it. And it doesn't mean he gets to freely disrespect others who he sees as less rational. Response 9. Definitely not the a-hole. Sounds to me like he's one of those socially awkward neckbeards who call women females and refuse to take them seriously because he legitimately thinks he's more intelligent. Now, I can understand some of that. Despite being female myself, I had a long time when I felt like in general women were illogical and overly emotional. I never believed all women were like that, just that it was a trait more common in us than men. I also was incredibly arrogant, and at one point, unfortunately, legitimately believed I was smarter than most people. I've been humbled a lot, but even now, I catch myself thinking someone is stupid without considering their background or the many areas in which they are most definitely smarter than I am. Your brother both being coddled and on the spectrum means his thinking is far more black and white on the subject than it should be. He deserved the reality check, and hopefully, coming from someone he knows loves him will make it sink in. Reply 1. Yup, I went through this in my early teens too. Told I was smarter by standardized tests and more mature by creepy older men, but I was too naive at the time and just accepted it. I internalized some misogyny for a while and really struggled until I was 16 and upset that I had few friends and didn't understand why people didn't invite me. I finally questioned my belief that they were the stupid ones and started just listening to people. I feel like girls go through the not like other girls phase to work through the misogyny that exists in our society, but most of us get out of it. I really hope OP is able to talk her brother and her parents into seeing a therapist, because OP's brother could use someone to talk to and work through how to talk to others and not just dismiss them. And OP's parents need someone to talk with them about how to start setting their son up for success rather than just blowing smoke up his ass. Response 10. He's going to go through life thinking that girls don't like him because he's autistic. That won't be true. It'll be because he's an a-hole, not the a-hole. Reply 1. Most people that go through life convinced the other gender is inferior/evil end up attributing their lack of success with said gender to something superficial. It's ridiculous. Response 11 NTA. People with disabilities can still be a-holes. He's taking advantage of it. Either he'll realize you're right and get his carp straight, or consistently be upset as he fails over and over. Response 12. As someone with one brother who is also high-functioning Asperger's and another brother who is considered special needs, I was preparing to say you're the a-hole. Then I read further, and you are definitely not the a-hole. For once in his life, he needed to be told the truth, needed to not be coddled, to be treated just like everyone else and not like a special snowflake. Your parents are very much TAs because they're giving him special treatment. Even though he's no longer a child and doesn't need it, what he needs is to be held accountable for his actions. My older brother is the one with Asperger's. I feel for him in a lot of ways because he has a much harder time socially and has no friends. I know from when he did have friends and partners that he treated them very well, but for the majority of my life, he was abusive, angry, and unreasonable. His anger issues still pop up every now and then, but overall, he's changed quite a bit in the last few years. He's about to turn 26, and my parents still treat him like he's 10 and give special treatment. They always make excuses for his behavior, except my mom is the one that actually acknowledges the abuse. My dad does not, and makes excuses for him. I know from so many experiences how frustrating it can be. I know when they're adolescents that they do need more help, but they get help so they can adapt to the neurotypical world. So they should no longer be coddled beyond a certain age unless their Asperger's is low functioning. I'm the only one who tells it like it is with my brother. Him and my parents don't appreciate it, but he needs to be made aware of these things or he'll never make a conscious effort to make a change. Your parents need to take responsibility and realize he's not a child anymore. In my opinion, you did the right thing here. Kudos to you. Reply 1. Also adding that he's very much the a-hole as well. He's being sexist, disrespectful, and rude. He legitimately thinks he's better than women, but he's seeking them out despite that. How does that make him the logical one and them the illogical? He's always being the one that's an ass and makes excuses that it's just the truth and it's okay for him to be rude. My rule of thumb, if you can't take the hit, don't get in the pit. You can be honest without being an a-hole. He's using his Asperger's to take advantage of people. Reply 2. Exactly. And why would it be logical for a woman to be with someone who thinks she's inferior? Why wouldn't she spend time with someone who respects her instead? Probably thinks he's just so smart and superior that logically a woman would value that more than she values being treated well. Reply 3. My older brother also has Asperger's, albeit high functioning, but he knows that this is beyond sexist. He and the parents are at fault for letting this behavior go on too long. Reply 4. Exactly. They're treating him like he's a child and still learning, but he's not. It's because of them that he's got the opinions he does, and it's disgusting that they raised him that way. I understand not wanting your special needs child to feel left out and let them know that they aren't inferior. But they literally raised him in a way that makes him think he's better than everyone else. They didn't teach him how to respect other people. They literally told him he's better than everyone. Response 13. Here's someone who has been diagnosed with Asperger and ADD. Having Asperger doesn't mean you're more intelligent than other people. Your mother has done the most awful thing you can do when raising someone who is on the spectrum, making him believe he's special for being on the spectrum. In fact, his problem doesn't seem to be a part of Asperger, but with being a general a-hole thanks to upbringing. Thinking less of other people is not a symptom of autism. Thinking women are illogical and irrational is not a symptom of autism. Being so lazy as to blame the world instead of changing yourself is not a symptom of autism. These are things that have been taught over the years thanks to your mother. The only thing to change him is if people stop treating him like he's special. You're not the a-hole for doing that. Response 14. NTA by any stretch of the imagination. Calling women hysterical is sexist, demeaning, and outdated. His beliefs about women are not a symptom of his autism, but of his misogyny. That said, please don't use the term high functioning. It is harmful and has no basis in science. It is just a way of saying someone is good at masking, and masking is exhausting. Reply 1. No, that's bullcarp. We all know what high functioning colloquially means. It's a helpful term. Say, here I know that he's verbal, and he's not flinging poop at his parents and sisters, and that he can probably hold down an adult job. People have a problem with that label out of completely different, completely not grounded in reality reasons. Before you hit me with it's a spectrum, so is color, yet blue, purple, and red are still useful labels. Reply 2. Since when is high functioning harmful? Every psych class I've been in has referred so Asperger's as high functioning on the autism spectrum. And when you Google it, it's in almost every definition. I'm genuinely curious because I'd really hate to offend someone without realizing it by using the term. Reply 3. I am trying to find the video I saw that explained it best. It was a video by an autistic woman explaining why it's so much harder for women to be diagnosed. The reason is that women are better at what's called masking. Masking is imitating the social and facial behavior of others. Women are diagnosed later than men because of this. Masking takes a ton of energy and is draining. Basically saying high functioning as a layperson is a way of saying your autism affects me less. Underneath the masking, the struggle is very much still there. So a person who knows nothing about the history of an autistic person but sees them as more normal will often call them high functioning, which is just a different way of saying I can't tell as much. I do not mean to say that I know better than psychologists or that the term has no place anywhere. Reply 4. I don't think it's harmful per se, but as a person who has bipolar, I have been called high functioning, and it feels condescending. Like, yeah, I have a career and successful relationships, and this is not necessarily unusual. I don't know, I'm not expressing this clearly, but the term seems to assume that functionality is unusual when that's not necessarily the case. Reply 5. Okay, this makes sense. I've always been taught the formal definition of high functioning in psychology is based on IQ and the ability to understand and work around one's mental challenges. But now that I think about it, a lot of people use the phrase without really knowing the individual, which definitely makes the use of the term inappropriate. Thank you. Also, if you are able to find that video, please post it or PM. I'd like to watch it. Response Teen, NTA. Speaking as an autistic lesbian, being on the spectrum isn't an excuse for being an insufferable misogynist, and he needs to know that. Response 16, NTA. Your parents aren't doing him any favors by shielding him from learning how to interact with people. From a practical standpoint, though, he's unlikely to accept your input are your parents, so it's time to drop the subject, even though you're right. Response TA. He shouldn't dish it if he can't take it. You gave him an honest answer, and it sounds like he needed to hear it. Response 18. NTA. I used to work with someone on the spectrum. They were extremely unpopular for doing stuff just like OP's brother. They had been coddled and buffered for a long time because no one wanted to risk hurting their feelings. My former coworker was straight up sexually harassing people, and they don't work there anymore. Don't let someone go on misbehaving, no matter what conditions they have. Light them up, have that come to Jesus meeting, get professional assistance or medical intervention. Response 19, NTA. Your post really hit close to home for me. I have a 22Y/O younger brother who is very intelligent with high-functioning autism. He also is unsuccessful in non-familial relationships and struggled heavily for years with ideals that were misogynistic. After years of hard work, he's made serious progress, but it took hundreds of arguments. Being truthful with him about these issues is the kindest thing you could do for him. Ultimately, the alternative is to risk seeing him alone and unsatisfied later on in life because he was unable to cultivate any meaningful relationships. Show him these comments. Maybe it'll open his eyes. I'm afraid he'll find some very low self-esteem girl and abuse her emotionally.